Hello, 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 ladies, and welcome to another episode of the Liberated Woman podcast. I'm your host, Christiano Green, and I'm a mindset coach for women, and I help women to overcome rejection, self-doubt, self-sabotage, fears, anxiety, so they can make smarter choices, take better action, and get better results in life. So this week on the podcast, really what I wanted to talk about was a topic that I haven't really spoken about for a while, and especially not in this space. And I thought it'd be great for me to share my journey with addiction, and how I've overcome them. Because I know that so many people out there struggle with addiction, no matter what kind of addiction. There are so many addictions out there that we can have, and more come as time goes on. But I thought it'd be a great idea to have a discussion about it because we don't talk about it enough, and sometimes we don't really realize that some of the people who are in, whatever position they're in, sometimes have struggled with some massive things in their life. So if we can share it and normalize it, then we can work on, helping people actually overcome it and get past it as well. So for me, I have struggled with addiction for a lot of my adult life, right? And, when we talk about what I've struggled with, mostly alcohol is probably the number one thing that I struggled with. I struggled with it probably since, early 20s all the way up until, a few years ago when I finally got things under control. Um, but yeah, alcohol's been a big problem for me. I remember, in my 20s when I would go out, I would get blackout drunk at least once a week, sometimes two or three times a drink. So I was a big binge drinker, party drinker. And, in Australia, in Sydney, especially in a bigger city, it was kind of like normalized that alcohol and drinking a lot was normal. It wasn't as big a deal, especially not when you're in your 20s, right? Everybody seemed to do it. Like, you're out at the club partying, everyone's drunk, everyone's, off their face, having a great time. It seemed normal, right? So continually having blackout every single week, this never seemed like a problem. But the problem was is that, when you have blackout nights, sometimes, you don't remember what happens, of course. And sometimes you do things that are just not your normal character, right? You might get upset and angry and aggressive. You might, lose the plot. You might do this, that, and the other, right? And the thing is that when you wake up the next morning, you don't know what happened unless someone tells you. You're kind of none the wiser, right? Now, of course, it didn't happen to me all the time. There'll be many times where, you know, the night was great and I just went home and slept and I don't remember really, a lot of the night. But there were many times when I got into arguments and fights and disagreements with people. I lost things, had things stolen, phones, money, wallet, different items of clothing, etc. So, definitely went through a period of time where that happened for a very, very, very long time. Now, the problem was is that, like I said, when I was in my early 20s, doing that, it was it never sounded like a problem to me. But as I started to get older, I realized that, I would try to control myself, but I always ended up back in the same problem. So I might go out and say, you know what, I don't really want to drink tonight, or I'm only gonna have a couple. But ultimately, what would it end up to? I would start once I had the first one, I'd be ready to go, and two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 would go down very quickly, and then we all know what happens. Now, of course, if you do certain things when you're drunk, the first time or the second time, people can forgive you for those things, right? But if you make it a pattern and you do those things consistently, people then start to think this is who you are, and rightfully so, right? Because someone is acting in a certain way multiple times around you, um, then they're showing up in a certain way. So you have to, if someone shows you who they are, then believe them, right? Now, because I never saw that side of me, I always felt that people were over exaggerating or telling stories or just trying to like make me feel worse about it. And that was when I was in a lot of denial about it. So I would always, apologize and blah blah blah. But because I don't remember it, I'd be like, that's not me. I don't act like that. I've never acted like that. So yes, I may have been a bit this way or that way, but blah blah blah. We're all drunk. You've probably taken it the wrong way as well, So, as you can see, got into a cycle of, making excuses, kind of dumbing it down so that, I could continue having it. Now, I've had so many different conversations with people in my life about alcohol, right? About it being a problem, about the fights that I've had or whatnot, but just never really listened to them, right? So that's kind of how when I'm looking back, I really realized how deep of a problem it was. Like, so many people were talking to me about it. And I didn't want to hear them because I didn't think it was a problem. I was in denial about it. I didn't want to deal with it, right? Because I was dealing with other things, right? Now, what led me to drink was a number of different reasons, right? Now, a lot of time for me growing up as a gay man, I dealt with a lot of rejection. I dealt with a lot of self-doubt, a lot of inner demons, right? A lot of bullying. Now, drinking was a way to escape from some of the feelings that I had, right? Because once I started to do that, like once I black out, hey, I can't remember. So I can't be in a bad state sometimes, right? Especially even, even if I was, I blacked out from it. So it was a way for me to escape those things because I wasn't dealing with it. I didn't know how to deal with it, right? And, because I was trying to be strong and trying to put up a front that everything was okay, I never asked for help. I never spoke to people about these kinds of problems that I was dealing with for many, many, many years, right? Dealing with trauma, dealing with anxiety, dealing with depression, dealing with severe loneliness because, I always wanted to find a partner but never could and felt like there was something wrong with me. I had really low self-worth. I couldn't put things together as to why people didn't see me in that way. Why didn't people value me? Why didn't people, find me attractive or whatnot, right? And so I like I said, I would go through the struggles, and it would be a constant thing. And then again, what I would want to do is I'd want to drink and avoid it. And then sometimes what would happen is I'd start to have severe anxiety. And one of the best ways to resolve the anxiety for me was to have a couple of drinks. It would ease all of that anxiety within me. So I started to use it to, like I said, numb myself to avoid certain things, to stop dealing with those things, right? But then again, every time I would just have one or two just to try to numb the pain or avoid the anxiety, it would ultimately lead to me having a bottle or more, right? And so I just kept going in a cycle. And so there were many, many, many periods of my life where I drank every single day, right? For months on end, right? And then there were some periods where I tried to go without, and usually I could never last more than a week, two at max, right? And that was even a struggle. So and periods and periods and periods of dealing with alcohol problems, right? And it would go back and forth. And sometimes, like I said, I'd be drinking, especially during times of COVID or when I was overseas traveling for work and I was on my own in the hotel room all weekend. I would drink the whole weekend, literally from the time I finished on a Friday until Sunday night. Sometimes even early mornings of Sunday, I would still be drinking. Monday morning, I'd be drinking, right? Just that much level of problem that I'm dealing with. And so as you can see, probably you might relate to some of these things. You might be realizing, oh my God, like that sounds like me. Note that you're not alone. There are so many of us out there who suffer, and some suffer in silence, right? And so for me, alcohol was a big problem. But I also got caught up in many other areas as well. So talking about it, when I was big on the party scene, there was many times in my life where I was smoking pot every single day as well. I was living in a house with friends and we would smoke every day. And again, when you're in these things, you don't see them as a problem until outside of it, you really get some perspective, right? What did they hindsight 2020, right? So looking back on some things and really realizing, hey, like I was doing that every day. Right. Sometimes I'd get up a lot of the time, not I say sometimes, a lot of the time, I'd get up in the morning, I'd get myself ready, I'd have a cone, I'd have breakfast, and I'd go off to work. Do my work. I was 5 minutes away from the office. So on my lunch break, I'd come home and have lunch and have a Coke. Then I'd go back to work and then boom. So pretty much, I was doing this on a consistent basis and it felt normal to me. And I could function. Because I could function, I didn't see these things as a problem. I was a functioning alcoholic, I was a functioning pot smoker, right? So these things would happen on a consistent basis. And again, months and months and months, if not years, right? Same thing happened with other drugs, some harder drugs like, ecstasy and GHB, right? And MDMA and ketamine, right? All of these other drugs I would do on such a consistent basis, right? Sometimes, like I said, I was living with someone who would have a lot of this stuff in the house all the time. And it would be a daily or every other day kind of thing sometimes, just to have fun. I was always trying to have fun and escape the place where I was at. Because like they're dealing with those things, you know, they're always there. And sometimes it's just easier just to try to have fun and avoid those things and get crazy. And me, for someone who me with my low self-worth, I always took it to the extreme. I always just kept wanting to go longer and longer and longer. And there were so many times where I would, be out for dinner on a Wednesday with friends and we're having a few drinks, and then someone would say, let's do this. And I'd say, sure, let's do it. I was the first person to agree and let's do it. Next thing we're doing, next minute is we're up all night, you know, on drugs. And then I'm going to work the next day still high, right? So functioning again, functioning. And again, doing these things thinking it was normal and that I was okay, right? Because again, in the moment, it was helping me to avoid the pain, avoid the struggle, avoid the overwhelm, avoid the stress and the anxiety and the depression and all of those things, right? And you can probably imagine, the level of stuff that you have when you've been severely bullied growing up, right? When you've had to, struggle with your identity, try to fit into a community that doesn't necessarily, see you as someone who is of high value, and to feel like you don't fit in or within your own family or within your own friendships, right? And so when you do these things, you just try to have a good time and forget these things, and that's been how I was for many, many, many years of my life. So alcohol and drugs are big things as well. But when you then move to the next things as well, there's other things like sex and porn, big things again that I had struggles with and addictions with, because growing up as the gay man, before I even came to terms with it myself, I was, the way that I would kind of explore it was through porn, right? And so for me that led for me to have an addiction to porn and to using it on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day. I'm not saying this to be crude because I know sometimes it might not be a topic that people want to talk about, but I'm sharing it because these things are huge problems for people. Now, they've done studies when it comes to porn, and the way that the brain operates when you're on porn is actually at a similar level to what it is when you're on heroin. And so what they say is that it can actually be harder to give up porn than it is heroin because how easily acceptable it is, right? And if you're in the moment, you can get it anywhere, anytime, right? On your phone, it's free everywhere, right? So these types of things become um, a big problem, especially for so many people out there. And so I know it's not just for men or gay men at all. Women deal with these things as well, So many women use porn on a daily basis, a consistent basis, right? And again, because it's so normalized, people don't see it as a problem. But the problem is how it's affecting us in maybe going out there for relationships or doing different things in our life, right? If we're so just content on going back and taking the easy path, which totally I did, then we get stuck in that. And I did that with me probably for 20 years, right? The dealing with the porn. Sex on top of that as well. Like, if I was feeling like I wasn't wanted, I would go off and I would do meaningless sex with people, right? Because I was trying to, like I said, to feel like someone wanted me, right? Now, oftentimes it was while I was high or drunk that I would get caught up on doing that, right? Um, and I, every time I did it, I always felt really, really bad about myself. It was never a fun experience. It was about getting off, and I just felt really stuck in those moments, right? But the truth of the matter is that I was longing for someone to like me. I was longing for love, and I was trying to get it in all these unresourceful ways, right? And so many of us try to get love in so many unresourceful ways, and we look for that quick fix instead of actually doing the deeper work. It was only when I really have done some of that deeper work on myself that I really realized how much I was messing up my own life. I was avoiding any real emotions because, like I said, every time that emotions came up that I didn't like, that were painful, that was anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, shame, rejection, doubt, sabotage would come in, and I would go straight to my easy way out: the alcohol, the drugs, the sex, the porn, right? Now, those are the key things that I would do. And very much at times also food, right? We all can probably relate to having some addiction to food because food is such an easy way to change your emotional state, right? If you're really in a bad place, you have a sugar rush, boom, things change, right? Anyone here who's had a massive sugar rush can understand. And probably my mum's can tell you, like, she knows how much I've been a massive sugar fiend over the years. Because again, it was just whatever way I could to try to feel better. And so then because of that, you get addicted to that. So I've had sugar addictions, right? carb addictions, things like that, where you just overeat and eat and indulge, right? And then you feel sick afterwards, and then you do certain things that just aren't good for your body, right? Now, I know there are many people out there who deal with some of these things, and I've done that in the past, and you know, I know how bad that is for our bodies and our minds and our hearts as well. Um, so those are the key things that I can say we can talk about when it comes to addictions. But other things that we can really get addicted to that I've struggled with as well in the past would be work, especially when I was in corporate the last few years before I moved into deciding it was time to leave. High stress job. My team grew from 20 to 300 in just a very short period of time. And I was always the person people would go to under crisis, like above me and my team as well, and so I was working sometimes 70, 80 plus hours a week, addicted to it, because when I was in the place I was meeting my need for significance. People found me important, so I was going for that. I met my need for love and connection as well. So many people admired me and looked up to me and saw me in a certain way. So because of that, I was meeting my needs. But again, I got addicted to it because, again, I felt important. I felt loved in some way. And so because of that, like I said, I would work harder and harder and harder to the point where I would be I'd be overwhelmed or stressed. And we can easily get addicted to overwhelm and stress. And for people who've grown up on, in certain traumatic experiences, fight or flight comes into play, and stress can be something that you're addicted to because you're used to it, and you're like it almost becomes feels a bit normal. So you become addicted to the stress because if you're not stressed, then what is it that you're feeling? It's strange. And I've felt that for many, many years as well. And it's only been recently where I've been doing a lot of deeper work and understanding how that came to play and what I have to do to, like I said, rewire my neural pathways to no longer be dealing with the stress of that as well. So those are some of the things definitely that I've dealt with. But we also know that there are other things out there when it comes to addictions, medications. So many of the clients that I've worked with and I've helped have been addicted to medication, been on medication for years, whether that's just to do with anti-anxiety and anti-depression, like sleeping tablets, like just like stuff for people's weight, like the amount of different things that people have been on for that have been just poorly diagnosed, in my mind, in my eyes, from what I've done, is astounding. And I think it's one of the most craziest things out there, the amount of people that get put on medication instead of actually just dealing with what's actually really going on. If someone was able to help them and support them through it, they would never have to get on the medication in the first place. And some of these people have been doing it since they were like 10 and they're in their 30s and 40s. So that what that does to your body is crazy. And to help people get off of that can be some of the hardest things ever, because it's now a belief system so deeply within you that you need this thing. This is a part of who you are. So helping people get off it is something that I've done. I've helped many people dealing with addiction when it comes to medication, help people when it comes to dealing with addictions to pot, addictions to sex, addictions to porn, addictions to meth. Like that's something really difficult to help people get off. Alcohol addictions, right? These are the things that I help many of my clients work through because, again, being someone who's had to deal with all of this myself, I can support people. I can help them with the journey. And also I can really uncover really what is the real problem, why they've been utilizing it, because it's never this surface level stuff. It's always the meaning that we give to certain events that happen in our life. And when we can uncover that and we can change the meaning and we can start working on those beliefs, you can free yourself from those addictions like I've been able to do myself. So I know I've been talking about this for quite some time, and I just wanted to, tap in and listen to you out there, because I know some of you are going to relate to some of these stories when it comes to addiction, because probably almost everyone suffers from it, right? Now, people suffer from social media addictions, like needing to be on social media all the time and needing to get likes and follows and, comments. If they don't, what does it say about them and their self-worth? Especially these days with people growing up more and more, like, some of my team members in the Philippines, like they had kids who are like, their kids are like 5 or 6, have phones and they're on Facebook, right? So how much are we getting our children caught up into this culture of needing to be liked? And then cyberbullying and all that stuff can come into play as well. So it's about really understanding out there, what is it that's your vice? What are you struggling with? Have you admitted it? Have you even realized it's a problem? Because again, when I was in the moment, I didn't see how much of a problem it was until I got out of it. And I needed to get out of it to really see the truth and speak the truth. So I just want you to just really think about it. What are you suffering with? What is a problem for you? What do you think that you're trying to avoid, right? And are you using with alcohol, drugs, medication, sex, porn, stress, work, social media, TV, like all of these things can become a massive addiction and a way of us avoiding and really dealing with the problem. So that's kind of what I wanted to jump in and talk about. I'd love to hear from you. I know this is a topic that not everyone wants to talk about publicly. So if you want to talk about it and have the conversation openly, do it in the comments below or reach out to me on Facebook. We usually have a discussion about this there, or just chat to me privately. Send me a private message because, like I said, if you're dealing with something and you need some additional support, just know that there are people out there who can support you, right? There are people out there who've been there and done that and have made it through. And you may think it's difficult. You may think it's a struggle. You may think it's something that you may not be able to have passed. But let me tell you, you always can. All right, I'm going to leave it there. I look forward to hearing from you. I believe this is an important topic to talk about. I'm going to be back next week as always. So always remember that you've got this and I've got you. Bye for now.